Live from the Balls Visual Radio Studios, this is the Blades on Balls show. And now, here's your host, the voice of South African rugby himself, Hugh Bladen. Hugh, it's over to you.
What a day we've got today. I've got such a special guest, and in the form of my pal for many years, Marcello Fiasconaro. Marcello, welcome. Hi, morning.
It's great to be here, and I love your new offices. It's fantastic.
Yeah, they're great, and thank you for gracing us with your presence.
What a sacrifice!
We're
I've
going
made.
to go through Marcello's amazing career. Amazing, you know. Marcello is a rugby fan and an all sports fan. We play golf together, and I think we first met back in about 1970. I think it
when
was.
I came up to Johannesburg. Yeah.
No, but I met you in Cape Town.
At the rugby trials, Springbok rugby trials.
I met you at. I've got a funny feeling it was one of the Wintle brothers' house.
Mike Wintle in Simonstown.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think it was. Sid and I were together, and you were at the party.
That's right.
In those days, we used to have Springbok trials, and we used to have a party afterwards.
After every game.
After every game.
I'm sure Peter Cronier was here, wasn't he?
Peter, in 1917, yes,
he was.
He could well have
sure
been.
He was, yeah.
Yeah. Certainly, our mate Yanni, the late Yanni Barnard, was there.
It's crazy.
Marcello Fiasconaro. Rugby player, athlete, raconteur.
Oh, yeah.
Have just retired from the Adidas company, doesn't like rapping, which our comfort does, much to my chagrin.
That's a good word.
Marcello, Western Province under-20 player on the wing. Where did you...
Actually, it was centre.
Was it centre?
Yeah, centre, yeah.
Oh, so you had some ball sense.
Yeah, a little bit. Not as much as...
I did read up a little bit about you, and your dad was born in Sicily, hey?
Yeah, I was born in Sicily, very near Palermo, in a place called Castelbuono, which, if you want to imagine it, when Michael Corleone shot the policeman in The Godfather, and they sent him away for a few years.
Yeah.
Up in the hills of Sicily. That's where he came from. The most beautiful part of the world.
Does he live there now?
No, my old man's passed on.
Has he?
Yeah. And but it's a funny story. He was born in Sicily, but he was shot down over North Africa during the war. He was a pilot, and he was shot down. Funny thing is, the pilot who shot him down, the Englishman, came to visit him in hospital that night. It's amazing. They were like gentlemen. Yeah, amazing.
Yeah, I know. Unreal.
And then he was sent down to Pietermaritzburg, to the prisoner of war camp in Pietermaritzburg.
Yeah, it's incredible, because when I was reading up on that, I lived with my uncle for a while, and he was building another floor on his house. He cast a slab on the let's say the ceiling of the single-story house he had, and he built a double-story billiard room and bedrooms, and he had 5 Italian prisoners of war. Yeah. Now we're talking about 1950,
early 50s. Yeah.
And in fact, the one guy became my big buddy.
Yeah.
And I think he spent more time kicking a soccer ball with me than he did casting concrete. Fabulous guys.
Yeah.
They were really fantastic. So your dad came out to Cape Town.
Pietermaritzburg, and then the day before armistice, when the war was finally over and they had to organize for the prisoners to go back.
Right.
He had to go into hospital, and he was in hospital for 3 weeks. He had to have a hernia operation or something to do with his wounds. I can't remember exactly. But when he came out of hospital, he was the only prisoner in a camp with 3,000 prisoners. And because he was leading the prisoners' orchestra at the time, and a certain Colonel Lowe loved his music, and he lived with this Colonel Lowe for 3 months in his house before he was finally shipped back to Italy. And in that time, he met my mom, who worked as a shop assistant in in Pietermaritzburg.
Yeah.
And when he got back to Italy, Italy was a mess. And he said, well, I'm going back to South Africa. It's a bloody paradise. And that's
Fabulous.
He came back.
And so they moved to Cape Town.
They moved to Cape Town. He got a job teaching music at
What was his
UCT.
instrument?
He played everything. He was he ended up as a professor of music,
I
but
saw that, yeah.
mainly piano. But he sung. He was a baritone, and he basically he eventually became head of the UCT Opera Company, and then head of Kapab Opera Company.
Yeah.
That was his love. You know, he had a
Wonderful.
great life. His job was
Wonderful.
his hobby, basically.
Yeah, fabulous. I was a little girl in HMS Pinafore.
Lucky you.
Well, lucky me, my mother could play the piano and read sheet music. And my brother was in the Pirates of Penzance,
Yeah.
also a little girl.
Yeah.
When we went to high school, before
yeah.
our voices had broken
Yeah.
and that sort of thing. And so we would dance around the piano doing all these Gilbert and Sullivan operas,
Fantastic,
Pirates
yeah.
and HMS and gaily tripping, lightly skipping, flock the maidens through the ship.
I'm not going to join it.
No, that's absolutely fabulous. So where did you go to prep school?
I went to prep school at Rondebosch Boys Preparatory School
Okay.
in Cape Town, and then
I told you that my daughter lives in Oakhurst Road.
you're kidding. Yeah, you did.
They live in
Well, I
Oakhurst
used to
Road.
walk Oakhurst Road
So
every
I've
day
got
because
two
I used to walk to
grandsons
school
who are
every
going
day.
to go to Rondebosch.
Good choice. Well,
Yeah.
hopefully my grandson, who's only 2 now, will also go to Rondebosch. Yeah,
Oh, wonderful.
that's fantastic.
Mark,
Great school.
And so you then went to Rondebosch Boys High.
That's right.
And
then
did you do athletics at school?
no,
What do you mean, no?
Well, I tried. Well, we had to run for school points.
Yeah.
And what happened was I never, ever from under 13, 14, never came in the first 3. And the big deal in those days was to get into the triangular team because the big schools they were Bishops, Rondebosch and Sachs had a triangular meeting once a year.
Yeah, right.
And it was a great event. All the Rustenburg girls used to come and watch it, and so we tried to impress the girls. but I never made the triangular team, and we had 2 great coaches. You remember Tinky Haynes, the referee?
Yes.
Well,
Yeah.
Tinky was one of our rugby coaches, but also a guy called Tiki Diaga. He was a coach, and he always got a lot of flack from other coaches in the country after I'd left school because they said, "Shit, you had March
Yeah.
in your school and you never." But I never.
You weren't winning.
I wasn't winning. I always wanted to make the team.
Yeah.
But I'd know, but I always played rugby, and that was my first love.
And you played first team rugby at school.
No, I left Rondebosch High School before I finished matric. So I didn't play first team rugby at school, but that's when I joined Villages when they were still under 19.
Okay, right.
And then I played under 19A, and then I went to the Army, where I played Army first team as an under 20. Then I came back the next year, played for Villages, and I had a great province under 20 side. Mornay was our captain. Our fly-half was Davy Snyman.
Right.
Our 8th man was Dougal McDonald,
Oh,
because
wow.
Mornay played lock at under 20.
Yeah.
So I was surrounded by all these good players. I was always lucky. I played with 3 Springboks fly-halves.
Yeah,
in my
wonderful.
time, yeah.
Dougal actually came to visit me the other day.
Are you kidding?
Yeah, he came to the house, and I invited Sid to come over.
Yeah. He's a great
Because
guy,
he
Duke.
is
Still a bit crazy, I think.
Yeah, he's writing a documentary on games that were socio-politically important.
At the time, yeah.
Yeah, so that
that's
was
right.
so. You now playing rugby for Western Province under 20s.
Playing rugby for Province under 20, and the next season I played 11 games for Villager first team and the rest for the second team, because the Villager backline was full of Springboks and Western Province players, the 2 Bryant brothers, Yanni
You were at
Barnard.
school with Rodney.
No, he was at Westerfield, I was at Rondebosch.
Okay.
But we had the 2 Bryant brothers and Yanni Barnard and H.O., but H.O. was injured most of the 97 season.
Yeah.
But I never forget my last game that year of 1970 was against Marty's. It was the main game at Newlands, and I marked Jannie Engelbrecht, who was my schoolboy hero.
So you were now playing wing.
I was playing wing because Rodney was injured. Rodney was injured that day, so I was playing wing. And we had a very tough game, and I just realised it was a 9-all draw, and they had a full international backline except the one scrum off, and he was a provincial player. I'll get his name later, but I realised that I have to get a lot fitter to be a better rugby player and a lot stronger. And at the same time, Stuart Banner, who was president of the Celtic Harriers Athletic Club, forced an amalgamation, didn't force, but suggested amalgamation between Villages and Celtics, because Celtics never had a clubhouse or a track, so to speak. John Gainsford, my rugby coach at the time, was very much against this because he said he didn't want the guys doing stupid stretches or athletics and taking them out of rugby. Anyway, it was, I got a phone call. I was a foreign exchange teller at Thomas Cook and Son one afternoon. I get a call from our club secretary, Chris Shute. Please, will myself and Miles O'Brien come to the Belleville track? We've got to run in a Collison Cup meeting. The Celtics boys have had some injuries and we have to fill in, please. So we... that
you
night,
went along.
We went along, but that
Did you
night,
run the 400?
No. It was the 100 meters that stage. The 100
Okay.
meters, but we got such a fright that we were now having to go to run in this meeting. So Miles and I that night, Friday night, we met at Brookside and went for an 8-kilometer road run up to Kirstenbosch and back. So imagine how stiff we were the next morning. But anyway, these guys were knocking blocks in. They all had spikes. Miles and I ran barefoot. We weren't really prepared. And to cut a long story short, I won and Miles came second.
Oh, wow.
So it was
Yeah.
And then I got my first real titbit headline in the Cape Times, Fiasconaro's on the march. And that's like a huge inspiration. And so I started running a little bit more. And Dave Stewart,
wonderful gentleman.
What a man he was another hero of mine at Villages, suggested he thought I should run the 400 meters along with Stuart Banner. And so a couple of weeks later I ran the 400 meters and I was put in the B division and I won in the same time as a Springbok who won the A division, a guy called Ferdi Pochempel, on grass, and this time I had spikes, but on grass and not a bad time. Yeah. And then Jannie Momberg invited me to one of those 1-hour meetings at Kutzenberg, and I was really nervous. I mean, a huge crowd. I mean, Stellenbosch really loves the athletics. They're knowledgeable.
I remember
crowd.
Those fabulous meetings.
And on a beautiful cinder clay track, and I was time-wise, I must have been about fourth favourite going into this race. And Stuart just said, listen, just stick with these guys. I had not a bad lane draw. Stick with him. And when you get into the home straight, just try and lift your knees and see what happens. So I stuck with him. And coming into the main straight, they must have been 4 or 5 meters in front of me. And I don't know where it came from, but I just lifted my knees and palm arms, and then I caught him about a meter from the tape and won. Yeah. And that was a spectacular, it was a great time. It almost broke the Western Province record. The next race did. And then I had a lot of pressure, what do I do next season? Because I loved rugby. And
yeah, sure.
But that's when Italy got hold of me. And they said, listen, which passport have you got? At that stage, I didn't have a passport. I wasn't even 20. No, I was just turned 20. And they said, listen, you got a chance, come to Italy because your times look good, but I don't think they trusted the times because, from Africa, who knows what they're doing their timekeeping with. Yeah. But they didn't know how well the meetings were run. And so I left rugby. I just said, listen, I'll give it a try. And then I went to Europe and started running and
wonderful.
Went from there. So wonderful. I was very sorry to lose to give up rugby because it still is
in your blood.
My best sport.
Yeah, right. Well, fascinating stuff. If you're
you're old enough.
No. If you've just tuned in, I have Marcello Fiasconaro with me here this morning. Here to talk sport, and we're here with Marcello Fiasconaro, and I say one or two of you may say, who? Marcello Fiasconaro, who very quickly ran into athletic fame. So then the Italians got hold of you.
Yeah, as I said, they didn't really believe our times, the times that we were running in South Africa. So I was invited to a meeting, an international meeting in Milan, and the 4 top Italian 400 meters were there, plus some Trinidad and Tobago and some United States runners. And it was at the arena in Milano, and I won that race, not in a great time, 400 meters,
yeah?
in 46.6. So it wasn't a great time, but I beat the 4 top Italians, so
Yeah,
I was
right.
automatically in the side. And a week later, I ran a 45.7 in the Italian championships to win the Italian championships and break the Italian record. So I ended up that year running in the Italian team at the European Championships in Helsinki.
That's in 71.
In 1971
Right,
in
yeah.
Helsinki.
And
And
you
that-
ran the 400.
I ran the 400 meters, and we got a bronze medal in the 4x400, which was great for Italy. And going into the final, strangely enough, who had been running from October 1970, and it's now August 1971, I had the fastest time. It was a 45.5, and but obviously I wasn't experienced, and all my Italian coaches and everybody said, you've got to watch this guy called Jan Werner, who was in the lane outside. I was in lane 5, he was in lane 6. And I made the final, and it was that Helsinki Olympic Stadium it's not huge, but it holds 65,000, and it was full packed, So,
Wow. Yeah.
So, and you go in there, and it was cold, miserable day, but it wasn't raining, and so I go off, the gun goes, and I keep Jan Werner just on my outside, and he's under control. They go down the back straight. He's just where I want him. And I go around the corner with 150 to go. And I see in lane 8 this guy about 8 meters in front of me in the outside lane. A youngster, he was like 19 at the time, Dave Jenkins. So we get into the straight, and he's 7 meters ahead of me. I said, oh my God. And so I start my final 100 meters,
yeah.
and you can see in the movies, I catch him on the line. And I passed Jan Werner about 3 meters before, so had Jenkins.
You had
So
Werner covered.
Mr. Stupid in lane 5, listen to everyone. But look, he ran a great because he ran a 45 but we were both given the same time, 45.5, but
Yeah.
in the photo finish, he won by 400ths of a second.
Oh,
So
wow.
it was a great experience, and Italy were devastated. I mean, the Italian president came to me and said, Marcello, why didn't you win? So I said, well, because you got there before me. So I was happy, and then,
So you won
my
a
Italian
silver
career
in the
started.
European Championships.
Silver and the bronze with the relay team in my first
Wonderful.
year. That was great.
That 1971. Then, obviously, 1972 Olympics.
Olympics, yeah. That
Munich.
was the Munich Olympics. I was thrilled. I had a great start to the season. I ran my first 400 was a 45.6, and that was early. It was like April, and the Olympics was July-ish. And then I started training too hard. I don't know, you got too keen, and a little bit of, non-professionalism. I don't know what the right word is, but I just started doing too much. And
This was still in Italy.
in Italy, yeah.
Yeah.
And I marched on, and what a great feeling. You march on with your blue Italian blazer, and Italy always liked to dress their athletes very smartly. We had white polo necks with this royal blue blazer. We looked very smart, but I knew that it was going to be very tough for me to run because I hadn't been training for the last 2 months, probably because of the stress fracture. And
Yeah.
I was in the village for 21 days, and I had 33 injections into my tendons and to my stress fracture in my metatarsal heads, they call their bones that go through to your toes. So I ended up not running, and I was really very sad. But much sadder than me not running was obviously the shooting with the Israelis.
Yeah, dreadful.
And we were billeted out like in alphabetical order. So Israel and Italy were quite close to each other in the same Connolly Strasse. And the worst feeling was we got up in the morning about to go to breakfast, and we weren't allowed out of our rooms and then we went onto the balcony to see what happened. And there were German guards every 10 meters along the small road pathway between us and all the teams in that road and we said, what's happening here? We didn't know. We just got the rumor that some guys had died. I said, my God, stabbing after a card fight or cheating in poker or something. And then the news came out, and it ended with us all going to the memorial service in the main Olympic Stadium, and that was also just a terrible, terrible moment.
Yeah.
A lot of guys actually lost their spirit, and I know 2 guys who went home. They didn't bother competing.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was a real dark moment. And then in '73 was a great year for me because I started from scratch.
Yeah, right. So now you were running. 72 you were chosen for the 400 meters.
Yes. Yeah.
And then we get to the point where you switched to 800 meters.
Yeah. Stuart Banner, again, a great coach and a great mentor for me, a great motivator. We felt, I was in 1971 and 2, I was by the American Track and Field magazine, which is like the Bible of the sport, ranked me as 7th in the world in the 400 meters.
Yeah.
Which was great. I thought it was fantastic. But Stuart said, we can do better. And I didn't have that 100 and 200 meter speed. My start took me a bit of time to get going. So we started experimenting with the 800 meters with great success immediately. And so I did a lot more distance training on the golf course. Unfortunately, not with my 8-iron, but trying to run like good, faster cross countries, and that became my event. Which my 2 big rivals in South Africa were Dickie Broberg and Donnie Milan, who were mates from Stellenbosch University, and I couldn't beat them I could beat them in 400, but I could never beat them. I never came close in the 800s. And what I used to end up doing voluntarily is actually trying to pace them in the first 400 meters so they could do better times in the 8.
Yeah.
But suddenly I got better, and in the Potchefstroom, at the SA Championships in Potchefstroom in '73, I'd already won the 400 meters 2 days before, and it came the 800 meters, and I beat Donnie for the first time ever using a ridiculous tactic, which was to go out like a madman in the first 400 meters, and I ran the first 400 in 51 seconds, which is unheard of.
Yeah.
And Donnie, when I turned around, he was at 400 meters. I just looked quickly, and he was about 10 meters behind. Now, then I could almost relax in the third 200.
Oh.
And you could see him, he was coming up on the film. You could see him come up, and then I kicked with 150 to go, and he didn't get close. So all the cross country had paid off. And so I won in 1:45.2. And then 2 weeks later, I beat him to equal the SA record held by Dickie Broberg of 1:44.7. And that stood for about 25 years.
Yeah.
And then like a month later, it was Italy, Czechoslovakia, and I got that world record. Yeah.
So you take off for Italy and take us through it, right? June the 27th,
That's
1973.
You have done your
Milan.
Yeah.
June the 27th,
Yeah.
1973. Take us through it.
Well,
Was Stuart there?
no, I'm so sorry he wasn't.
Oh.
He was, but I spoke to him in the morning, and I was so nervous because there was this guy called Josef Plachy from Czechoslovakia, and he had already run in the Olympics as a youngster, and he was famed for his great last 150-meter kick. And everybody was trying to say, yeah, you've got to be careful of this kick, and don't relax his kicks. And so I spoke to Stu in the morning, and I said, what should we do? So he said, why don't we try and do what we did in the SA Champs with Darnie? So we go out like a madman, which was easy for me to run because I was a bit of a funny fella anyway. But he said, let's do the same thing and see what happens. So I went out, and this time I was at 51.2, and I said, shit, this is feeling fast. So at the bell, with 400 meters to go, I turned around to see how far Plachy was, expecting him to be about 8 to 10 meters behind, and he was right on my shoulder. So I said, oh gosh, yeah, but now I've got a problem. So literally, I didn't have that third 200 meters to relax, to wait for him to catch me and then kick. I started sprinting for home, well, nearest amateur sprint, from 400 meters. And I went down the back straight, and with the movie afterwards you can see, but at 200 meters to go, I said, I just chance he has to have dropped off by now, because I turn around and then again he's right on my shoulders. Oh my God. So we get to about 150 to go, and I don't accelerate because I can't accelerate anymore, but it looks like he's suddenly, his lane is not, in fact, he was behind me, but it looks like he suddenly is running up here because he suddenly slackens off, and it looks like I've made a huge spurt. It's not. I just kept my pace. Yeah. And so, in actual fact, the plan worked exactly as we planned.
Okay, you've got 150 meters to go. Are your legs burning?
I'm really praying. I said, please, help me, somebody help me, because I can't do anything. If he comes, that's me. I'll be happy with a good second, because I knew the time was going to be fast. But you don't really ever want to believe you can hold a world record. Although I used to have 2 stopwatches in my hand, and I used to tell a friend of mine, I said, the world record is now. And that's me. But on the track it's completely different. So I went through, and the stadium went mad because it was on a clock, and 1:43.7, and I'd broken
whose record was it?
It was an 11-year-old record held by one of my heroes, Peter Snell of New Zealand.
New Zealander. Won the Rome Olympics.
That's right.
1500 and 800.
And the Tokyo.
And Tokyo.
So
did he win both in Tokyo?
I can't remember.
I know he won both in Rome.
Okay, then he won. Then I'm not sure. It's a bloody good question, actually. I know he won the 800 in Tokyo as well.
Okay, so the stadium goes mad. You're in Milan,
as only Italians can do.
You've broken the world record. Now, where's Sally?
Sally, you won't believe it, was at that time. She was on a plane because she was on holiday in Greece because she wasn't allowed to be with me. The Italian president was. He thought I was, not serious about my athletics, and he didn't want any women.
But you were going out with Sally.
I was going out with Sally at the time. Oh yes, definitely.
Yeah, wonderful.
A pilot on the plane back from Greece to Joburg went to her because I don't know how they knew she was my girlfriend, and said, "By the way, your boyfriend's just broken the world record."
Oh wow!
Yeah, so that's fantastic.
Goosebump stuff.
So I got back 2 days later, and then. Yeah,
you got back to South Africa 2 days later.
Yeah.
Now, let me tell you guys and gals, if you don't know, you should know. But if you don't know, that was on the 27th of June, 1973. That record in Italy is still the Italian record for the 800 meters.
Yeah.
Quite remarkable that, hey? That record stood for... What is it?
40 years now.
40 years.
Yeah. Well, it's 40 years last.
40 years last year.
In fact, in June
and they
this year.
flew you to Italy to
they were
celebrate
great. As Italians love to do, they love to festeggiare, we call it. They'd like to have a feast and a party to commemorate that that event. So they flew Sally and I over, and we had a week there, but we had 3 great parties. In Milan, the mayor was there. Just they go cuckoo. They give you silver plaques, and they just
absolutely wonderful.
Yeah.
And was it there that they presented you with the Cavaliere Ordine al Merito della Repubblica Italiana?
Sure, but you multilingual, yeah. And that was about 4 or 5 years ago, and it was also a great surprise. The Italian ambassador and the Italian consul got together, and they awarded me with this honor. It's like basically
it's the highest civilian honor you can get.
Yeah, it's like an Italian knighthood, basically.
Yeah, wow. I think that's absolutely
no,
brilliant. You're so
it's
modest.
quite embarrassing, actually.
No, it's not embarrassing. I love it because, I've known you all these years, and this is the first time we've actually sat down and really talked about it, and you're feeling. Okay, tell me about Stuart now, because I know Stuart. Stuart was my lecturer at the Dale Carnegie sales course. He's a great, charismatic guy, good looking, and
he was
as charismatic.
Well, you just call him Sean Connery, and he starts puffing up because he looks just like Sean Connery.
With a Scottish accent, which made it even more attractive.
No, he was a great guy. I mean, the way he first motivated me, as I said, we were rugby players at villages trying to get fit, and I'll never forget one afternoon at the old Brookside field where villages used to be. There was, in the old days, they used to put mark the touch lines and the try lines and the 25s with limestone and with a brush.
Yeah. Mm.
And there was at one end of the Brookside field there was a white barrel of this limestone, and at the far end there was another barrel. So he said, just run around that flag to that barrel and back. And we didn't know at the time it was 300 meters. Oh. And so Miles and I set off like madmen, and we run, and I see Stuart click the stopwatch, and his huge eyebrows like going up and down, up and down. So. And we were stuffed. He said, "Okay, just relax and walk around, and I want you to do that again in 10 minutes' time." So off we went again. Same, and his eyebrows really. It's a pity this is not TV, but so we did it a third time, which we both vomited. But I think that was when he realized that Sherbert, we can do something with these guys, because Miles also became a good sprinter in his own right.
Yeah. And
then he always became like a father figure, but we were big mates.
Did your dad go back to Italy, or
he was living in Cape Town. He stayed in Cape Town,
okay.
And he was also a huge fan. But he had nothing to do with my coaching, like for example Seb Coe's father. But Stuart really was a huge motivator. You didn't want to lose and he gave you pep talks and
terrific.
But it was a great guy, and he's
so
still active in his own athletics.
When did you tell him that you had broken the world record?
We phoned him that night. We had a huge press conference. There were a lot of British TV guys there. Because BBC, they covered everything, and we phoned him, and I was just so sorry he wasn't there, because on a negative note, later that year, I was disqualified for false starting in the European Cup semi-final of athletics in the 800 meters. Now, it's so difficult to false start in the 800 meters, and he was there. Yeah. And the Italians invaded the pitch, and the meeting was held up, an international meeting, for 45 minutes because the police were called in.
Oh, really?
And from that disqualification, that actually changed the laws of the 800 meter start. So internationally now you don't have on your marks, set, go. It's just on your marks, bang. Go. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh wow. From that particular one.
Yep.
Yeah. That's amazing.
Yeah, it is. Anyways, that was a bad end to 73. In Oslo. Yeah, and it was the most, because and the IWF actually apologized with a telegram later, seeing the TV footage. Yeah. with a bit of calm, they realized it wasn't me, because they keep you in an unnatural position without blocks.
Yeah.
So people were moving but not going over. So it was a long story. So
it
and
was
they
a
did change
bad
the law.
call.
Yeah. A bad call, yeah.
Yeah, right.
It's too late now.
Yeah, just shows you. And we've got to keep on running because it's Monday morning and we're just about out of time. Angus McDermott and Leon and a few guys are having their own little argy-bargy here. Leon Petzer would like to know if I love it, Marcello's voice is cigarette or whiskey induced.
I suppose
Or
a bit of
both.
both. A bit of both, yeah.
Well, I smoked, and I smoke when I had the odd lemonade. But did you smoked when you played under 20 rugby or something?
I did actually. In fact, my captain at Village's first team, a guy called Alistair Tom, well, Yanni Barnard and I, Yanni at that stage was the rep for Lexington Cigarettes, and we'd have a game of first team rugby, and we'd get into the changing rooms underneath Newlands, and we'd light up a Lexington, and Alistair just used to hang his head and say, guys, your lungs are so clean, how can you? But I did love smoking. I must admit, when I was running properly, I didn't smoke, except at the cocktail. I used to love the cocktail parties afterwards. I had a couple there. But when I stopped running, I really got back into smoking, and I just had to give up. I mean, at one stage, I'm not proud to say it, I was smoking about 60 a day, two packs of 30. So, but I stopped. I haven't smoked for about 20 years. Yeah,
that's good, man. So good, Marcello. What an absolute pleasure to have you with me here this morning and hearing all those stories about the world record.
Yeah.
Very quickly, you wake up in the morning, you think, I'm the only guy in all the history of the world athletics. Nobody's run this faster than I have.
That's a great feeling while you've got it. Yeah. Look, it only lasted 3.5 years, the world record, but still,
3.5 years is 3.5 years.
No, it was great.
Absolutely wonderful. So,
Marcello, thank you. Thanks to everyone.
It remains just have an unbelievable week. Bye.
That was the Blades on Ball show. Join the voice of South African rugby on your wireless next Monday for more unbelievable memories and banter. Until then, stay classy, like 20-year-old Glenn Morangi classy.